Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. I am your host, Josh Newberg, and today is Tuesday, September 3. Boy, did week one live up to the hype. The blowouts, the upsets, the recruiting visits. We're going to cover it all today on the Wiltfong Whiparound, but before we get going, you guys hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. If you've watched just one of our videos this offseason, then hit subscribe because we only turn up during the season, so jump on board. All right, also, I can get you On3 for just $1. Use promo code FONG1. That's FONG1. You can read everything that Steve, Chad, Pete, Nakos are writing about for just $1. I know you've been thinking about joining On3. Now's your chance, and I can get you there for just $1. Use promo code FONG1. All right, big show today. We are back. It is week one. We're going to get into week two here on the weekend, but let's go back to week one. We got to recap some of the things that we talked about all summer. And one of the things that we talked about all summer was that the winner of the Miami-Florida game would head into the season with completely opposite momentum. The direction of the winner versus the direction of the loser would be completely opposite. And then on Saturday, we saw it. Miami dominated 41-17. Whew. Big game in the swamp. Let's bring in the great Steve Wiltfong. Steve, we're going to talk recruiting fallout of that Miami FSU game. DJ Pickett, the five-star corner committed to LSU, was in Gainesville, much anticipated visit. You and I talked about this one literally all summer. So what are you hearing on DJ Pickett coming out of this UF Miami game?
Well, I talked to his dad again on Monday morning after talking to him a little bit during the game on Saturday. Now, they still say 1,000% committed to LSU, still in great communication with the Tigers, going to visit LSU 3 times, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Georgia games, if I'm remembering correctly. But he's going to see Miami play again in Coral Gables. They're going to be at the Florida State game. And Mario Cristobal has taken the bull by the horns in that recruitment since he's committed to LSU. Cristobal was the lead recruiter regardless on any blue chipper. But now that they're playing from the 2-hole, maybe the 3-hole, but I think the 2-hole, he's coming even stronger for DJ Pickett, who told Azubi Charles he saw everything he needed to see from Miami on Saturday. One thing we saw at that game regarding DJ Pickett and some of the recruits in the stands from Florida was Miami players at the end of the game, Josh, walking over to DJ Pickett and company. Talked to his dad about that. Justin Scott is the roommate of DJ Pickett's cousin, Booker Pickett Jr., so they've gotten a chance to know Justin Scott. He was just coming over to say hello. Justin Scott was able to get over and say hello. Booker Pickett tried to come over and say hello. By that point, Florida was on to it all, was able to set up a little bit of a barricade to stop the Miami players from coming over. They couldn't stop the Miami players from yelling, "Come to the U, don't go here." But Miami's got a lot of momentum from this game, as we said they would. They look terrific. They look like the favorite in the ACC right now, which puts them in the college football playoff as a top 4 seed. And if Mario Cristobal and Miami are a top 4 seed in the college football playoff, it is going to be a hell of a close on the recruiting trail. And DJ Pickett is someone that they're going to go after as hard as anybody, the number 1 ranked player in the state, number 1 corner in the country per the On3 industry. And they're going to get back for what should be an amazing atmosphere in Coral Gables when they host Florida State.
Yeah, what was going on there at the end of the game? We saw some of the Miami players running over, trying to high-five some of the Miami recruits. And then you saw Katie Turner, their GM, their director of player development or recruiting, run in with the stiff arm, giving the Miami players. I mean, some of the best defense that Florida played was against the Miami players trying to talk to their recruits.
Well, she was doing her job. And look, Florida's got a chance. They got 11 more games to rewrite their narrative of how people were going to see them this season. But that was a blow for them in front of all those recruits to lose the game in that fashion. Miami dominated them from start to finish. There wasn't much to cheer for Florida as that game went on. And for Miami, they were still throwing the ball with less than 2 minutes to go. So they were making a statement about what this football team's going to be like this year. And DJ Pickett and company saw it. His cousin, Cannon Pickett, 2026 offensive lineman, was right next to him in the stands as Justin Scott and Booker were trying to come over and say hello to those guys. Look, LSU also will have a chance to rewrite their narrative for this season after losing a tough one to USC there on Sunday night. But Miami's going to battle them for DJ Pickett.
All right. Who else does a game like this have an impact on when we're talking Florida, Miami recruiting?
We talked a lot about this on our live recruit reaction show that we did on Saturday. People need to get that on their radar on this On Three Recruits YouTube channel. Hit like and subscribe so you are alerted when we go live after big games. A lot of Miami talk on there. I think the big name that I'm looking at moving forward is Joshua Moore, because receiver is such a position of need for Miami moving forward. It's a position that they've identified as we need to hit big here at the end of the 2025 cycle and in the transfer portal following the season. Joshua Moore is committed to Florida right now. Miami, probably the runner-up. His family was on the Miami campus days before he committed to Florida. So there was a lot of interest. They're going to continue recruiting him. They're going to continue recruiting Dallas Wilson. Yeah. They're going to try and hang around with Florida legacy recruit Vernell Brown III. I would say that's probably an uphill battle for anybody for the love he has for Florida. But receiver is a major position, a need for them, for people to see that offense. And then Miami has a guy they can point to in their class. They can say, we have Luke Nickel, 2025 quarterback recruit. He committed to Miami in August of 2023, Josh, without much fanfare. He was not a state champion quarterback at that time. He was a young man that went to Miami's camp, threw well in front of Shannon Dawson, Mario Cristobal and company, said he wanted to commit. They were happy to take him, and we saw why last fall when he threw for almost 4,000 yards, leading Milton High to a state championship in the Peach State's largest class. They got a chance to win it again. They're a top 5 or top 10 high school football team in the country right now. Miami can point to him and say, this is the kind of offense we're going to have for years to come with Luke Nickel, and we need the wideouts also to get us there. And Joshua Moore is a major target for them moving forward. That is for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned Vernell Brown being a tough flip, but what about Ben Hanks? I know he's a legacy prospect too. He committed to Florida not too long ago, and it was a really tough decision for him between Miami and Florida. And I know he's a legacy, but I think they maybe have a better shot at flipping Ben Hanks than they do a Vernell Brown.
In my opinion, I agree with you. And I think Miami kind of viewing a lot of these recruitments, similar to Florida, really going into the season, like we're going to play the long game with a lot of these guys. They thought around both programs, a lot of optimism and excitement coming into the season, ton of confidence around Miami. When you talk to people in that building, when we get this thing rolling, when we have the year we want to, when we have the year we know we're going to have this year, talking to people around that program all summer about Miami, Ben Hanks is a guy that they're going to play the long game on and play well this year, continue to recruit him. His twin sister, is a big part of that recruitment. She's going to play volleyball in college. Can they play together? Who's the program that's going to be able to accommodate that? There's all kinds of moving parts with the Ben Hanks recruitment, but he's one of the top 10 corners in the country to play the defense you want to play. He's a guy that certainly helps you fit that mold. Miami already has a terrific defensive back class, but they would love to add Hanks and Pickett. That'd be 8 DBs, I think, committed right there. But they want to load up in the secondary. We've seen them. They had a great D-line class last year. They had an outstanding offensive line class 2 years before. DB, they're stacking right now. They want a couple more pieces and then bring it home strong at wideout, maybe get one more linebacker as well. But they're going to have a lot of momentum. I think I loved what I saw from them on Saturday. Then talking to them internally, they knew that was going to happen. So you feel really good about that now moving forward. They just got to go out and execute on Saturdays now, and we know they'll crush it on the trail. They had a top 5 class last year, Josh, without this on-field momentum. But now if they got it rolling, they're going to be fun to follow.
And Miami tends to play the long game under Mario Cristobal. We saw a late flip of Justin Scott, the 5-star defensive lineman. The year before, it was Mark Fletcher. Armando Blunt, they flipped from Florida State last year. He's another 5-star defensive lineman. So Canes fans, talk to us. I mean, coming out of this win, we knew Miami recruiting momentum would be hot. Whoever won this game, we knew they were going to be hot on the trail. So talk to us. Who's your big-time targets you want to play the long game on? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's head out west. USC. Hey, USC, big-time win to open the season against LSU. They win in Las Vegas. There were some recruits there, but one of the recruits we're going to start with was not there. Might as well start with quarterback commitment, Julian Lewis. Let's just get right to it. Stick or flip?
I think stick, and his dad was there. And, Josh, on our live recruit reaction show, we ended it talking about Miami. That show came full circle. Miami's the big recruiting winner of the weekend. Yeah. And I said, if USC beats LSU on Sunday night, they're going to be right there pushing for Miami as the big recruiting winner of the weekend. And I would still give the nod to Miami just because of what they did on campus, that rivalry game, having a lot of their top targets in the building in a visiting atmosphere that almost seemed like it flipped to a home atmosphere in a way. But what an awesome weekend for USC to go out there with a brand new defensive coaching staff and show that this program is moving forward under Lincoln Riley and company. It's amazing. There's people out there that think that Lincoln Riley forgot how to coach. They scoff at the fact that he took 3 Oklahoma teams to the college football playoff. That is not easy to do. USC was on the brink of the college football playoff his first year as the Trojans head coach. Makes over the whole defensive staff. They were hitting hard against LSU, and it resonated with a lot of recruits. But even before this USC-LSU game, the intel was favoring Julian Lewis sticking with the Trojans. Yeah. His dad went out to Las Vegas to watch this game. Julian was not there. He's preparing to try and win a state championship this year, battling guys like Luke Nickel, Miami commitment to win the title this year. But I like where USC stands there. I think a lot of folks around the USC program that I talked to think that Julian Lewis sticks. Now, Indiana, they're still battling. He's got great relationships with the Indiana staff, particularly Tino Sunseri. Indiana's trying to get him to the Maryland game or the Michigan game. We'll see if he visits. But right now, I like where USC stands to hold on to Julian Lewis. And for him to see Miller Moss just step in there, right? Oftentimes people are like, well, it's easy to coach quarterbacks when you got the best quarterbacks in the country, and you point towards Baker Mayfield, who was a walk-on and not the best quarterback in the country when Lincoln Riley started coaching him, by the way, and then Kyler Murray, and then Caleb Williams. Miller Moss in the bowl game and now in this start against LSU has played fabulous, and you got to give the kid credit, but Lincoln Riley, his offense, the way he coaches, puts them in position to have so much success. And that's what Julian Lewis loves about Lincoln Riley. He calls him the hardest working coach in the country because he's the head coach, he's the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback's coach. They have great conversation. He's always been Lincoln Riley's guy, so there's that trust. He was number 1 on USC's board, which spanned 2 cycles, 2026 and 2025. He feels the love. USC's loving him. I think it's going well. Indiana trying to change that narrative. Colorado trying to change that narrative. But still, so far, so good for USC.
Yeah, it seems like it. And that was a great display for USC to sell to recruits because they played really tough defense. And then in the end, it was Lincoln Riley's offense, Lincoln Riley's quarterback that won the game. So kind of it checked all the boxes of what USC is trying to sell this 2025 recruiting cycle. All right, let's talk about a couple key 2026 recruits that were impacted by this game. We're seeing a lot of recruiting prediction machine picks roll in for Ryder Lyons, On3's number 3 ranked quarterback in the 2026 cycle. Ryder Lyons is out of California, so this is a big-time in-state pickup if they can close. What are you hearing?
Well, he's the number 1 quarterback on Lincoln Riley and the Trojans staff board, and he's a guy that could reclassify to 2027 because he's taking a mission. Reclassify is not the right word, but you count him as a 2027.
He's going to sit out that 2026 season, go on a mission, and then return and start his career in 2027. So when we talk about him, we can consider him a 27 quarterback.
Possibly, but he's also possibly the best dual threat quarterback in the country, regardless of class, just a dominant football player for Folsom High. And he was at the game, and he just said that watching USC play like that makes the decision easier, pointed towards Miller Moss and his performance, called Lincoln Riley a special coach. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did something soon. All these 2026 quarterback dominoes have basically fallen off. Him and Helaman Kasuga are the most touted guys out there right now, and Helaman's trending towards Texas A&M following another visit to the Aggies this weekend. But Ryder Lyons, I love where USC stands for him right now. I joined colleague Chad Simmons of putting in an On3 RPM after talking to him and his mom. They had a fantastic time inside Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas watching USC knock off LSU.
On3's number 1 2026 prospect, defensive lineman Jakeem Stewart, came out yesterday. Now, we're going to talk about USC and where it all stands, but I want to get your opinion. Jakeem Stewart came out yesterday and said he's going to make 2 big announcements this week. What will they be?
If you're asking me to predict those announcements, I mean, I'd hate to. He's got something he's trying to do. I wouldn't be surprised if one had to do with some top schools maybe, and then he's also been working towards trying to reclassify, so we'll see if he's getting that done.
Yeah,
But
my
one
best
thing
guess. I'll guess. You don't want to say it. I'll say it. I
I
think
just did.
one.
I just
He's gonna.
answered the question.
I think he's going to reclassify. I think he's looking to make two announcements. One of them is going to be reclassify, and I think the other, I don't know if it'll be a top list, but I think we'll be able to decipher it. I think he's going to come out and say, I'm reclassifying, and this fall I'm going to visit these 4 schools. And obviously those 4 schools are going to be what we can consider as top schools.
So he's trying to work in visits. He's got a lot of Saturday games himself. That's going to prevent him from taking some visits to some games that he really wanted to go see. Oregon, Ohio State being one of those. I believe he plays on that Saturday, if I'm remembering correctly. One thing we know for sure is that USC is one of his favorites. He loves Ohio State. Oregon's up there, and LSU's in the middle of that recruitment as well. And for USC, they're not going to look like the 85 Bears this year, but recruits want to see improvement with all the investment of the new defensive staff. And I think we saw that against LSU. For the first time in a while, we saw USC hitting hard, playing physical, the goal line stand to start the game, just the way that they were tackling LSU out in space and around the line of scrimmage. We haven't seen that from USC in a long time. Coach Henderson, Coach Deontin Lynn, Coach Entz, just Coach Belk, just a fantastic defensive staff, really one of the best defensive staffs on paper that you can put together. They're taking over a program and a culture and a defense that has not been physical for a while. And in game one, under this new staff, they came out and played fabulous, played with a lot of spirit. And I think that's what we're going to see from USC all year. Now they got to go get the players. If you look at this USC class, it's top heavy on defense. If you look at what they're doing in 2026, it's prioritized on defense as well. Now they got to get a quarterback. They did not land a quarterback in 2024. So that makes Julian Lewis even more important in 2025. But the performance they had shows people like Jakeem Stewart, hey, what these guys have been telling me all offseason is not just a hope. He saw it game one against his home state team. They were tougher. They got it done. They out-executed. They played with more poise than LSU. That also helped them win the ball game. And so Jakeem Stewart enjoyed it. Coach Henderson's from New Orleans, so that certainly helps in the recruitment of Jakeem Stewart. I think we've seen USC lead at times. I think we've seen Ohio State lead at times. USC's right there for On3's number 1 ranked prospect in 2026.
So who do you think leads unofficially right now? Because if he reclassifies this week, that's kind of the official start to this really consolidated, sped up recruitment. So who do you have leading unofficially right now?
Well, before the season, I would have told you Ohio State had the edge. And so we're only through 1 week, man. I mean, I don't know. You know, Ohio State was certainly the program that I think his visits there, being around that coaching staff, talking to that coaching staff regularly, Larry Johnson being a legend, and all the people he talks to at Ohio State, I would give them the inch. But that doesn't mean that I would give them the win. I mean, we know LSU is going to pour a lot into that. And then USC now, well, dude, you just saw the Trojans do what they said they were going to do, so that's got to mean something. And then Oregon, he's really excited about Oregon too. And we know Oregon can throw haymakers with the best of them in these blue chip recruiting battles. But Ohio State coming into the season, I would have gave them the inch. And it's going to be exciting to follow his recruitment moving forward, because those are 4 programs that seem to be on the rise in their own little space now, right?
Yeah. And like I said, this recruitment's about to get started. I think I would go unofficially, before we get it really going here, I would go LSU number 1. I just think
you're predicting the end. I'm predicting
the end.
I gave you the current. You're predicting the end.
I'm predicting.
I gave you the current.
Okay. Currently, I would go USC, LSU, Ohio State, and Oregon. In the end, I think it's going to be LSU, USC number 2, Ohio State number 3, and Oregon number 4.
I don't hate any of that, although I would move USC over LSU also in your
in the
thing.
end.
And then, no, like right now, currently.
Oh, right now.
Like I think LSU has work to do in the recruitment of Jakeem.
I mean, get him on.
Doesn't
campus,
mean they won't get it done, because doesn't mean they won't get it done, but they have work to do, in my opinion. They're in the top 4, so it's not like they're in a terrible spot. And the unofficial top 4.
These are just our unofficial Wiltfong Whiparound rankings pre-reclassification.
Exactly right. And he likes Oregon, but that's probably the program that we've talked the least amount with him, but he's had some great visits out there. So we'll see. But Ohio State and USC have done a fabulous job recruiting Jakeem Stewart. He loves the people there.
And when
Loves
he
those programs.
reclassifies, though, it's more about catching lightning in a bottle because this recruitment's going to go real fast. So
No
I know
question.
he's had some great Oregon visits, but if they don't,
No question.
and I think they'll get him in for a game. But they're going to have to do it all over
Hey,
again.
he could announce some good NIL deals or whatever this week too. It's a new era, and he's out there working for it all.
All right, you guys, let us know. Comment section below. We're just guessing. What's Jakeem Stewart going to announce? Maybe it's just a commitment, Steve. We have no idea. So you guys, let us know. What do you think the number one player in the 2026 class is going to announce? Maybe this week. Let us know. All right, what else stood out in USC's win over LSU to you?
Well, I think the other big takeaway, and you can go to WeRSC and On3 and read a bunch from the weekend from Scott Schrader and I. But RJ Sermons was at the game. He's the number 2 corner in the country in 2026. His dad played at USC. I talked to both of them as they were driving home from Allegiant Stadium, and they just felt like USC was back. Dad was so fired up about his alma mater. And I think like him being a former player, he wants what's best for his son, and he wants his alma mater to be able to be a program he can point to and say, they have all the resources to turn you into the player and person I want you to be. And I don't know if he could have said that with 100% fact before going out and seeing them play well. Like, again, USC's defensive staff on paper, outstanding, as good a defensive staff as anyone has in America, but they got to do it again at a new job. That's how the world works, right? So they're now in a new polo shirt. And they get out there, and week 1 showed a lot of promise and a lot of forwardness with this program. And it really resonated with RJ Sermons and his dad, and they had a fantastic time. We'll see him inside the Coliseum this fall. He's looking at some powerhouse programs across the country, but if USC's humming, you got to think they'll be hard to beat for him.
All right, this weekend, USC's back at home, and they are hosting 2 big-time official visitors. Linebacker Ty Jackson, On3's number 1 rated linebacker, and also Jerome Miles. He's the number 8 wide receiver in America, top 10. Jerome Miles' recruitment's really heating up. Ty Jackson's not going to make a decision until December. USC getting them both on campus this coming weekend.
Well, I think they can make a move for Jerome Miles. He's from Utah, 6'3", runs 10.3, runs 4.4. He's electric and dynamic. Lincoln Riley, his offense, his track record of the receivers he's coached and recruited. Him, Coach Simmons, those guys have a lot to stand on in that recruitment. So I could see USC being a major factor for Jerome Miles as he continues through his process. With Ty Jackson, they've done a good job of building relationships. Again, Coach Henney doing a good job leading the charge there for USC. They're getting them out. This is kind of a Hail Mary visit. You shoot your shot, see what happens. He's been to Florida 8 to 10 times, been to Alabama a bunch. Florida State's getting the last visit in November. His mom went to Florida State. A lot of love for the Seminoles. Penn State, the wideout, he's been to Penn State before. This is USC. It's their first time. They got to hit a grand slam, but shoot your shot. Especially, this is a lot. Again, there's a lot of energy around USC. We're smiling. We're talking about the Trojans. We haven't talked about USC in a lot of episodes other than Julian Lewis. Is he going to stick or is he going to flip? Now we got some good stuff to talk about with USC, and people are feeling it. There's a lot of good energy, a lot of excitement here. And so we'll see a Ty Jackson and his family get caught up in that. USC, again, they're going to have a defensive staff where they can point to and say, not going to be much better than this, obviously there's some other really good defensive staffs, but again, USC on paper, man, is pretty damn good.
All right, USC fans, I feel the energy. Do you feel the energy? Tell us who's your top target and what is USC going to finish with in 2025. Let us know. Comment section below. Let's head down to Lincoln, Nebraska, where the Cornhuskers are gearing up for a big recruiting weekend. The Colorado Buffaloes are coming to town. I want to talk to Steve Wiltfong about about a big 5-star target that's going to be in town. We're talking number 1 athlete, Michael Terry III. Steve, I know you've put in a recruiting prediction machine pick in for Texas when it comes to athlete Michael Terry III, but Nebraska not out of this one by any means.
No, recruitments are fluid in Nebraska. Getting him on campus for a 3rd time this calendar year. Took his official visit in the spring for the spring game, returned at the end of summer. Now he's coming to this big brouhaha inside Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. He's talked about the pro player development at Nebraska, the exciting offense, talked about Nebraska being on that trajectory upward under Coach Rhule and company. They got a dominant win against UTEP. There's some good buzz and energy around this program. But Saturday night against Colorado, a rivalry game, that is an opportunity to show these recruits in person what that environment's like, where this program is headed. And it could be big for Michael Terry and his family. They have great relationships at Nebraska right now. They're excited to get there for this one. I think Texas leads, but can Nebraska change that this weekend? They're certainly going to have an atmosphere and an environment where they can make a move.
All right, let's talk about a pair of flip targets that are also going to be on campus. You broke the news about wide receiver Cortez Mills. He's committed to Oklahoma. He's from Miami. Committed to Oklahoma, one of the top wide receivers in America. He's going to be in Lincoln. And also, Dawson Merritt, committed to Alabama. He's out of the state of Kansas. So, Nebraska, can they get the spatula out early in the season?
Well, these are guys that have been top of the board for Nebraska the entire cycle. So when Cortez announced his commitment to Oklahoma and Dawson announced his to Alabama, they never have gone away. They've continued to maintain the strong connection with both. And Cortez is coming out on a visit. He had a great time at the spring game, like that environment. And then Dawson Merritt, his family, his dad's a coach with the Chiefs. They have just a good rapport with Matt Rhule and company, and that relationship has remained strong. He has visited already one time since committing to Alabama, so this is a return trip to campus. And I think if Nebraska has the season they want to have, they can be a real factor for Dawson Merritt as his process continues. Alabama, that coaching staff, what they've done at other places, what Alabama has done historically throughout Dawson Merritt's life, the track record of player development, the excellence. That's why he's committed to the Crimson Tide. They're not going to screw up that recruitment. For Nebraska, they have to play well. They have to show that this is a program that's on the way up. They haven't had a winning season in like 5-6 campaigns. It's been a while since Nebraska has ended the year with a winning record. So they have to show Dawson Merritt and his family, yes, we like you, Matt Rhule, what you've done historically as a program builder. It has our attention, but we got to see it at Nebraska. And if Nebraska can continue to show Dawson Merritt and his family that this program is indeed finally rebounding from several straight losing seasons, then I think that they can be a real factor to flip Dawson Merritt when it's all said and done.
Yeah, two big-time targets that I think they have a shot at. Both of them. We'll see how that plays out. Now, four-star linebacker Christian Jones, he's probably Nebraska's most important uncommitted target as we head into the season. We're expecting him to be in Lincoln as well. What do you think about where the Cornhuskers stand with Jones?
Yeah, he was at the UTEP game. He told me he will be back for the Colorado game. And he, too, is liking the trajectory of the program, getting around the players on the team, seeing the way that they're responding to Coach Rhule and this coaching staff, and that culture excites him. He also wants to get back to Oklahoma for a game this year. I probably still give the Sooners the edge right now, but Nebraska hanging in there, going to get him back on campus again. He's visited an awful lot. So if you follow the visit rule, then he will end up at Nebraska. But he keeps talking up Oklahoma and is excited about the Sooners and wants to get to Norman as well.
All right. Number one offensive tackle in the 2026 class, Jackson Cantwell. Everybody's trying to take a stab at Cantwell. Last weekend, Ole Miss got him on campus in week 1. This weekend, it's going to be Nebraska. We know they made that run at David Sanders. Jackson Cantwell is the next number one offensive tackle in the 2026 class. Nebraska laying the groundwork here. Do you think they're a legitimate contender to land him?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the game visits he lined up. He's got a keen eye on the SEC. You're talking about Georgia. I'd probably give Georgia the edge going into the season. Alabama is way high on his list, LSU. But Nebraska is a program that he's been to a couple times in his process, loves being in that atmosphere around that environment. And he, like so many others, waiting to watch Nebraska bust out. What a time. Saturday night, prime time. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime inside Memorial Stadium. This rivalry is back, and Nebraska looking to get a little revenge after losing last year in Boulder.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to go live as soon as that game's over. That'll be our recruit reaction on the On3 Recruit channel. Make sure you guys are subscribed because we
Josh, keep an eye keep an eye on quarterback Michael Clayton. I know I cut you off there, but he's visiting this weekend. He's got an offer. He's very excited. 2026 recruit as 2026s fly off the board. This is a guy that the Huskers have poured a lot into. Him and Dayton Raiola, younger brother of Dylan Raiola. He's camped. He was out. He's been out to Nebraska. He was there at the end of July. Had a great visit coming in to watch Nebraska play Colorado. Starting quarterback at Buford High, taking over for his brother. I like where Nebraska stands with Dayton, and then they're moving up the list for Michael Clayton as well.
Yeah. All right, let's play a little hypothetical. Walk with me here. Let's pretend that the Huskers win 8 games, 9 games. Say they have an incredible season. The Huskers, they're back. They're making a bowl game. What's the potential if Rhule can pull off a big season?
Well, through all the losing seasons, they've recruited top 25 recruiting classes, and then they go out there and they can't win one-possession football games. So if they're able to win 9 games, I don't know, top 20 class maybe. Look, Nebraska's program is still going to be one that's a development-based program that can win some blue-chip recruiting battles, pull out a Dawson Merritt, win out for a Dylan Raiola for whatever reasons, proximity or ties to the program. But high upside guys, getting the best out of them, culture fits, maintaining them in your program. I talked to Matt Rhule at Big Ten Media Day. Roster retention is so big with him, he said. So a lot of what they're doing behind the scenes from an NIL standpoint is geared towards keeping their best players in the program, because that's how they're going to build it up foundationally at Nebraska, getting some big wins in the transfer portal. Guys like Dante Dowdell, who's going to be a terrific running back for them. We saw that in week 1 for the Huskers, getting him from Oregon. But it's a development-based program. Player retention is so important for Nebraska. It is for everybody, but for a place like Nebraska that wants to restore glory, keeping your best young players in the program is what they're pouring a lot of resources into right now, that they can still go out and win a blue chip battle, and they got a lot of support and infrastructure for that. But it's all about roster retention for Nebraska and Matt Rhule as they get their culture and scheme in place.
All right, let's talk a little Ohio State recruiting. The Buckeyes did what they needed to do against Akron, coming out with a 52-6 point win. But, you know, there's some question marks on this commit list. We're going to get into it, Steve. Before we talk about potential flips, Phillip Bell, wide receiver out of California, quietly committed to Ohio State over the weekend, but it's a big addition. The Buckeyes now have 4 wide receiver commitments. Why did Brian Hartline go to California to find Bell? What makes him special?
Well, he quietly committed because he did it at 10:30 p.m. on a Saturday night while college football was going on. But it's a big commitment for Ohio State, as they, taking a big receiver class was a priority for them with all the turnover that they're going to have in that room with the NFL draft again year after year. And Phillip was a guy that they targeted and identified. He was top of the board alongside guys like Quincy Porter, and now they have him in the fold. He's a guy that's physically ready to play college football right now. He can play in the slot. He can play on the perimeter. He's a good route runner. He's a sound catcher of the football. And Ohio State, just their track record, Brian Hartline, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, he pointed towards Chip Kelly and his offensive background. Those are all reasons why he chose Ohio State. And again, they're putting together another fantastic receiver class. Obviously, there's a standard in Columbus of caliber of talent you have to play there and push that room. And Brian Hartline and Ryan Day feel like Phillip Bell's another guy that can come in as a true freshman and continue to keep that receiver room humming.
All right. Ohio State has the number 1 class in America, which means these Sharks are circling, and there's some 5 stars that other teams are trying to flip. Let's talk about Naeem Offord. There were some rumors all summer about Alabama and Auburn maybe flipping him, but those rumors, they kind of simmered. We didn't hear too much about it. However, now that Naeem Offord showed up on the Plains for week 1, I'm over on Letterman Row on the On3 network, and it's a thing now. They are admitting that, hey, keep an eye on Naeem Offord. He's one that Ohio State is going to have a hard time ending up signing by December. So Naeem Offord looking around. I mean, this is getting real, huh?
Well, this is big boy recruiting, right? When you're a championship caliber program in the Midwest and you're going into SEC country to recruit, where proximity to those schools is much easier for Naeem Offord to get to Auburn for a Big Cat weekend and get to a game day. And there's a lot of momentum and excitement around Auburn right now. And you have Hugh Freeze bringing all these players together on the field, commits and top targets on Saturday, and saying, all right, we need Deuce Knight to join this group, and we need Naeem Offord to join this group, and everybody's rallying around and getting fired up. It's a lot. And there's some people around Naeem Offord that think that, Auburn has a great chance here, but Ohio State's done a fantastic job. The relationship with Coach Walton, the trust that they have in Coach Walton to develop him on the field and off the field. I mean, Naeem Offord's older brother is a stud running back for Tulane that could have went into the portal and gotten a better logo. But this isn't a family that's just about all of that. It's fit, and they feel like he fits in at Ohio State also. And there's a lot of trust with Coach Walton. And they've recruited him the right way, and that's why he's committed. But certainly Oregon's in the mix. He's going to visit Oregon for the Oregon-Ohio State game. Maybe it's locked in by now, but talking to his dad recently, the Iowa-Ohio State game in Columbus was one on the radar. He was like, Coach Walton, what's your first big game of the season at home? And I believe it was Iowa. Look, Ohio State, you win some, you lose some on the trail. They've taken and they've lost. They held on to Edric Houston last cycle. They've been in these wars, but they'll do what they got to do to hang on to Naeem Offord, and we'll see where the chips fall at the end, because we know Auburn's going to do what they got to do to try to get them.
Yeah, speaking about doing what they got to do, since Ohio State insiders are now openly admitting that Offord could flip, I mean, that leads me to think, well, what's next for Ohio State? I'm looking at Dorian Brew out of Conroe, Texas. I know he's committed to Oregon, but Dorian Brew nearly committed to Ohio State. Do you think that they could maybe double back on a guy like Brew?
Well, I think like with so many prospects, these guys keep the communication lines open with so many schools, even after they commit, even if it's quiet. Dorian Brew's not a guy that I have on flip watch right now, but I do know that USC remains in the picture, continues to talk to him. I think there were times where USC led for Dorian Brew, so they would be a program, if they have a great year, I would point to and say, hey, they're going to double back and see, hey, how are you feeling about the Trojans again? And Ohio State, certainly, he almost committed to Ohio State. He silently committed to Ohio State, almost publicly committed to him. His mom went to school there. There's a lot of ties. They did a good job recruiting him, just Oregon won out. Again, he's not on flip watch. You're just asking me hypothetics. I think he's got lines of communication open with people, but he's not someone that I think is unhappy with his decision or regretting or having.
No. I more so asked you if Ohio State would pursue Dorian Brew. I didn't say Dorian Brew's going to flip.
Well, they were
pursuing him.
They were pursuing him even when Naeem Offord wasn't taking visits elsewhere. So, I mean, if Dorian Brew called USC or Ohio State and said, I'm having second thoughts, I think they got room at the end. Okay. If Ohio State loses Naeem Offord, I'm worried about senior risers. If I'm a school that's got like good DBs committed that aren't the mainstream names, but they're having hellacious senior years, those are where a school like Ohio State, with their terrific scouting department, they're going to flip someone from a school that we don't talk about very much, and take one of their good players. That's kind of the recipe, right? That's what Notre Dame will. I think if Notre Dame loses Deuce Knight, the quarterback that they go after might not be an obvious one right now, but it might be someone having a great senior year.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, you said that Ohio State needs to be careful when they go into the South and they take some of the top players, because those teams in the South are going to defend their territory. Well, they also went into Pennsylvania and they landed top 100 edge Zahir Mathis. He's the number 2 ranked player in the state of Pennsylvania. And now Penn State's coming back for what they want to keep in state. Is Zahir Mathis on flip watch to Penn State?
Well, I think that one's a battle. Penn State's going to keep working. They got some momentum in that recruitment that he's certainly keeping a keen eye on Penn State. And so the Nittany Lions are in that one. Nittany Lions just put in an on 3 RPM for them to land on 300 offensive tackle. Malachi Goodman, he's another key piece for them, a guy that brings some versatility to the offensive line. And then Zahir Mathis is a guy that Penn State's in the mix for. And when you look at the way they play defense, for them to go into West Virginia and dominate that game, that was a tough first game for Penn State on the road against a West Virginia team that's coming off 9 wins, the most excitement around the program since Rich Rod and all those guys stalked the sideline in Morgantown. And Penn State kicked their ass. I mean, they dominated around the line of scrimmage. They looked good on offense. They looked explosive on offense for the first time in quite some time. And as usual, they hit extremely hard on defense. They typically lead the country in tackles for loss, 3 and outs, total defense, quarterback pressure, sacks, all of that. So as you hear Mathis sees it, they're going after him, and they're in the mix.
Man, look at us talking Big Ten recruiting here on the Wiltfong Whiparound, deep in Big Ten territory. They say we don't do it, but we do. All right. Some good news for Ohio State with the number 1 class in 2025, but we're talking 2027 here. Quarterback Brady Edmonds is trending to Ohio State. He's the number 2 ranked quarterback in that 27 class. He's from Huntington Beach, California. So Ohio State dipping into some West Coast talent. Who's the main competition here?
Well, Brady Edmonds hit up Chad Simmons and I on Monday night and told us that his top 4 is Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State. Now, he's got some game day visits coming up. He's still going to be at USC and UCLA. The first Ohio State game he planned on going to was homecoming, so he'll be at the Iowa-Ohio State game now. He's also going to get back to Texas. They're in the top 4, but I think the Buckeyes are setting the pace. He said as much. Ohio State's his leader. That's why my on-3 RPM is on the Buckeyes. He's going to take these visits. He could come off the board shortly after here in the fall.
All right, let us know. How are we feeling about Ohio State recruiting? The ups and the downs, but the Buckeyes still have the number 1 class in America. So Ohio State fans, talk to me and Steve, how are we feeling about this class? All right, let's talk about some new recruiting prediction machine picks from you, Steve Wiltfong. Let's start with Auburn. You got 2 picks in, one for Elijah Melendez, one for Usman Chroma. What happened this weekend for you to make those predictions?
Well, I talked to Elijah Melendez a couple times this weekend after he decommitted from Miami. He had a great visit to Auburn. Just loves the chemistry he has with the staff and the recruits, and being in that environment. He's said as much since we put in the RPM that Auburn is his leader. So those are the easy picks. They just got to get it to the finish line. And then Usman Chroma, talking to sources that spent time with him on the plains, people around him and around that recruitment, they point to Auburn leading. So Chad Simmons and I went with the on-3 RPM in favor of Auburn on Sunday morning. Now, Florida State, Tennessee, Georgia, some of the other contenders. So we'll see if they can change the momentum in this recruitment. But as Auburn chases the number 1 class in the country, number 1 tops. They're top 5 right now. But Deuce Knight, I think he is their next one. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Deuce Knight back on the plains this weekend for their next home game. And if you get Deuce Knight, he is going to be a lightning rod recruiter. He's got great energy, great personality. His peers in this class like him. And I think he's having conversations behind the scenes with recruits about potentially playing with Auburn, even though he is committed to Notre Dame. Just kind of getting a feel for what Deuce. Just kind of
I know Deuce is. I'm saying, who is he talking to? The people want to know.
Well, he was just at Auburn, right? So he's there with all those blue chippers. Elijah Melendez, who was just on campus. I think Andrew Babalola is one that wasn't there. That he's involved in conversations with Andrew Babalola about what it would look like if they all came to Auburn. But you got Babalola, you got Chroma, you got Melendez, you got Naeem Offord, you got Sam Carter, the receiver committed to Georgia Tech, who's having a great start to his senior season. Auburn, they're in the hunt for the number 1 class in the country. And Melendez and Chroma are 2 more that we like where Auburn stands right now.
Yeah, and Steve, if you were wondering, I still got it. I broke a little news this weekend. Had Elijah Melendez on the Inside Scoop on Sunday. Fresh off that Auburn visit, he named Auburn his leader right here on the On3 Recruits channel. So I'm no Steve Wiltfong, but I can still break some news.
No, we love to see it. And people need to hit like and subscribe so they know when to watch those interviews with guys like Elijah Melendez, to watch our recruit reaction show on Saturday night. We need to let the viewers pick the name of that show, Josh, but I'm excited.
Recruit reaction is just a placeholder. We can do better with that title.
If people want to draw us up a little design with you and me on it too, we'll take one of those as well. But I'm excited to get back on with you on Saturday night. Nebraska, Colorado, kind of the game that we're featuring, but we'll be looking around the entire country. Kentucky's going to have some key recruits on campus for South Carolina. Certainly Michigan versus Texas in Ann Arbor.
That's a
big noon kickoff. I love noon kickoff. I wish the big game was always at noon, and we'd rock our show at 3:15. But we're going to be up late. We'll be up late.
We
from
are
Lincoln.
On 3 Recruits After Dark. We're going to go live about 10 p.m. Eastern, 11 o'clock
No,
Eastern.
no, 11 o'clock Eastern, but it's going to be awesome. And so that, but we'll see you again on Inside Scoop. We'll see you guys on Thursday for the next episode of Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe and have a great Tuesday.